Hello, everyone. It's me, Andrew. I'm here in my home in lovely Ligonier, Pennsylvania, and it's been a bit of a little bit of a crazy day today. Originally, I wasn't supposed to go live because I had a meeting in Pittsburgh, and then the meeting in Pittsburgh got canceled. So here I am, and then I accidentally forgot my little bag last night at the cottage, and the in my bag, my car keys and the cottage key were in the bag. So I found a key, a spare key for our car, but I didn't find one for the cottage. So I was gonna scramble around the house and try to find something to work on, and yeah, so that didn't really pan out the way that I thought it would, but that's okay because I think that this is just as important as any other kind of little technique that I can show you. So yeah, hopefully all of you are doing well out there and that you're having a good start to your week. Yesterday we had a sell down of some little kits that I put together of things for my stash. Hopefully you all enjoyed those. If you didn't see that, there's still a lot left. There's gemstones and glass and vintage things and new things and artisan things, and they're all kind of color coordinated. If you're familiar with my D-stashes that I used to do, they're kind of the flavor of that. You get a good deal for what you pay, and yeah, hopefully you all like those. So if you missed that video, check that out. That was yesterday's live, and I think the title of that one is "Sell Down Lots," but I'm not sure. I see a couple people have tuned in. Hey, Susan. Hey, Suzanne. Hey, Donna. Hey, Lorraine. Hi, Diane. And hey, Miriam. So we have, there's a lot going on as well with the building. We're waiting on an estimate from our electrician so that we can maybe negotiate the price down. We're closing, I think, on this Friday. So it's a little bit stressful, but the building is such a good price that if we aren't able to negotiate anything down, then that's fine. But um, yeah, it's kind of like you're holding your breath and preparing for something, and I just have to remember to breathe. So yeah. Kristen's watching. Hey, Kristen. Happy birthday, Kristen. Hopefully you had a good happy birthday. If you missed it, I think yesterday was Kristen's birthday. Donna says, hey, Marianne. And Debbie says, hey, Andrew. And Diane, who is husbands with our wife of our electrician, said he's doing some work about that. Oh, great, super. Well, thank you. I don't want to pressure anybody. I hate to be pressured, so that's why we haven't been all like, where is it? Because that's kind of annoying. But yeah, we're trying to get that going. So hopefully it all works out. I don't know even if the seller will come down on the price anymore, um, even if uh, even if there are things, even if he comes back with an estimate. So I don't know. We're just playing it by ear at this point, and hoping for the best. I think that's all you can do, really. Marion says, good luck on getting the price down. I think we have a spam comment, so I have to put somebody in timeout, even if I agree. Um, June says, hi, Andrew. Hey, June. Oh, Diane said she was going to pressure him for us because she hadn't heard him say anything about it recently. Well, thank you. So, we're just trying to figure things out. If we can't get the electrical work done sooner rather than later, that's fine. It's not something that is necessarily a huge priority, but it will put some of our timetables back. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, if you're just tuning in maybe for the first time and you're like, what is he talking about? So last year we bought a building that we thought was going to be our another store, and has since turned into my studio in the fulfillment department for Allegory Gallery. And we have that building. We thought we were going to turn the front room into a little shop. And then that didn't really happen because we have to put so much money into fixing it up. And it's actually quite a lot of money that has to go into fixing it up. So we, at the same time, we're a part of this project called the Acre Partners Cohort. And it's a collaboration of different nonprofits in the area who have banded together to encourage creative entrepreneurs to open businesses in Johnstown. So we were a part of that, and we found a building, and I'm summarizing like 7 months of a lot of work into a very concise amount of time. So anyways, we found a building. We liked the building. We put an offer in on the building. We went back and forth, and then we found some stuff, and then have to go and get back through that. And anyway, so the building is going to be another store that we're working on, and that's going to focus mostly on jewelry. So we're super excited. Allegory Gallery is mostly a bead store. We do sell art and jewelry as well, and as we also sell home decor. If you haven't seen any of the tours of the store before, William has posted some fairly recently, within the past couple months, that take you around the store, and you can see what we have in stock, or at least had in stock as of that video. Now we add stuff almost every single day, and change things out. So things are always changing in the shop. So yeah, so that's happening in the near future, hopefully. So we're super excited about the new store whenever that happens. I think because of some of the financing, the way that we got it, we were super lucky. We got angel investors to help, because we probably wouldn't be able to get a traditional loan otherwise, because we had just bought the cottage, and so that kind of changes things. But we tried to do a fundraiser, and it kind of plateaued, and I might try to get that kind of kick started again, but we really didn't raise that much money. So on top of everything, we're kind of just having to take it slow and easy, which is not normally my kind of way. I like to do lots of things, all the things. So yeah, so we're having to I don't know, I feel a little bit flustered. Can you tell? Or running up and down the stairs trying to looking for things. But one of the nice things about an idea book is it kind of puts me in a Zen state. So I'm excited to share this with you if you haven't seen these before. Um, and yeah. So I was fortunate enough to go to a cool art school in New York City called the School of Visual Arts. And it was there that I took a class with an amazing artist named Brooke Larson. And it was a drawing class, but he did more than just teach drawing. And that sounds kind of weird. But what it really did, what he really taught was a curiosity for learning and creativity. And at that time, uh, I had taken some drawing classes and I had done some things, but for the most part, I was a very young artist time, and at that time period, a lot of places they teach you, this is how you do this, and this is how it's very by rote, if that makes sense. So they say, hey, copy this old master's work, or do this, and you're kind of trained in a system. And I think what Brooke taught us was that we, as people who are beginning our journey, there aren't really established steps out there, so yeah, so he encouraged us to kind of think for ourselves and create our own pathways, if that makes sense. So it was really inspiring to work with him and to have him as an early influencer in my career as a professional artist and creative person, because it really helped open the doors to the ways of thinking. So, like when I was in high school and stuff, they try to encourage us to keep sketchbooks, and that was fun. However, one thing, I wasn't super disciplined about it, and the other thing is that I would agonize about it. Like when I got a new sketchbook, I was so intimidated about using the book. Since then, I've discovered that there's a thing called the fear of the blank page. And as a young artist, I felt that. I was like, oh goodness, oh sugar. And there's something so pristine and wonderful about kind of the unbroken expanse of a blank page, that it sometimes can be a little bit intimidating. So I've since come up with different techniques to help me get over that. And one of those things is an idea book. So I'm going to show you an old idea book, one of my first idea books, and I'm going to show you my current one. And we can kind of work, I can maybe do some stuff and work in it. But yeah. Facebook user says, the clean white page, I totally understand. I think I had another really wonderful professor in college. Her name was Victoria Kahn, and she wrote and illustrated the Pinkalicious books. And she was really instrumental in saying, sometimes you have to murder your darlings. And what that means is sometimes as artists, we can see something and make it precious. And sometimes that preciousness holds us back from pushing it to its furthest capabilities or our furthest capabilities. So, like if you get a strand of sapphires, for example, you may be like, "Oh, these are so beautiful. I don't want to do anything with them because they're so beautiful just by themselves." So, part of my brain says, hey, guess what? You have to murder your darling. So just try something out, make up a design. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Break it up. If it doesn't work out, you can always take it apart. And so, yeah. Um, and so, yeah, so it was definitely something that made me think about art in a different way. So let me flip the camera. I'm getting a couple different messages pop up. I will ask, if you're watching, please don't private message me when I'm on, because I get these notifications pop up. And then I'm like, oh, I'm trying to see out this one eye and read out this one eye and do this. And I'm not a newscaster. So that's pretty tricky for me. So, anyways, let me turn things around and we can look at my idea books. So hopefully you all enjoy this. I'm going to be, I know for a fact I'm going to be at Beadfest at least on the 20th. I'm going to be doing a talk on painting jewelry components. So that should be fun. I need to work up some samples that are good for the cheap seats, as they say. So I have to make some really big, probably wild, crazy designs using that, but I think it will be fun. If it goes well, I think I may try to stream it while I'm doing it. So we'll see. I'll ask Katie about that. But I kind of just signed up to do that just recently. So I don't know all the details just yet. But yeah, so I'll be at Beadfest in Lancaster at least on Saturday. I might try to go earlier. It depends on everything. Hanging out with my family. They're going to be there. Green Girl Studios. My sister Cynthia Thornton and Azalea are going to be there. Cynthia says, "Are you going to be at the Beads of Courage thing?" I'm not signed up to participate in that because they asked me a while ago, but I had a class at the time at Touchstone, and unfortunately, the class got postponed. And so until next year, because there was an issue with the water pump, so the class got canceled. So then my schedule suddenly freed up, but it quickly got filled back in. So we'll see. Cynthia says, just to hang with Jean and Katie. Well, maybe we'll see. I have to talk to William. The issue that we're having is the closing date for the new building was supposed to happen last week, but then it got pushed to the 18th. So I have to be there for that so that we can sign all the contracts. So I was originally going to go, and then now I don't know if I can go as much. So I don't know. It's going to be tricky to balance everything. But I think in the end it'll all work out. So we'll see. I need to get a real calendar and sit down and plot everything out. So there's going to be that. That's happening this weekend. So I'm super excited about that. Cynthia is supposed to come up after Beadfest, and I don't know how long we're going to have to work together and hang out, but we're going to hopefully have a couple days to do that, have some sales and make some things and collaborate and dream out loud, as they say. So hopefully that will happen after Beadfest. So if you can't make it to Beadfest, we'll still have different things for you to kind of get into. So yeah, we'll see. Susan says, wishing you both really good vibes on the closing of the new building. Thanks. It's a little bit, it's not really stressful because we've been super fortunate to have such a caring support network. So in that way, we're very fortunate. When we bought the cottage, we took out a traditional business mortgage, or a mortgage for a commercial mortgage through a bank. And that was super complicated and super frustrating. And even though they worked really hard to make it happen and we appreciate it, there were so many hoops to jump through. And we had to provide 3 years worth of tax documents and go through receipts. And we had to plug in this number and line up this paperwork and jump through hoops. And it seemed like every day there was a new kind of task that we had to do, and things would shift so quickly and out of our control. So it seemed very frustrating at the time, and it took a long time to get the mortgage paperwork completed. And this is also during the pandemic, and with people submitting their PPP loans and that all happening at the same time. So a bank that usually, can leisurely take their time, they were getting inundated with calls and requests and emails. And so it was just super frustrating to try to be able to like talk to somebody and get it done. But we did get it done, and we have the cottage, and I love the cottage. Um, and we're gonna still keep the cottage. Some people were like, "Oh, are you just gonna sell the cottage?" And then we're like, "No, we're gonna keep the cottage." And people have asked, "Are you gonna move the store?" No, there's no plans of moving the store. We're gonna keep the store in its current location. So uh, we'll see. I mean, it depends on what happens. Like if something happens and the global economy crushes or something, then we may have to be forced to move the store, which is not ideal. But you never know. Maybe we'll win the lotto and buy a couple buildings or something. So we'll see. Anyways, that's enough of an update. I'll flip the camera around and you can see some of the things that I'm working on. All right. So you're going to see the ceiling for a moment. Bear with me, please. One moment. One moment. All right. And I think this is oddly mirrored. So I don't know if William changed the setting on my phone. But anyways, so this is one of my first idea books, and we went down to this. It is mirrored. Let me see if I can flip this so you can actually see. Um, this. All right. I think that's better. How's that? Dave says, you live in a cottage? No, I don't live in a cottage. We bought a cottage last year, and that's my studio. We live in town. And yeah, so that's what we're doing. Susan says, funny how the closed captioning on my iPad tried to describe the flipping of the screen. Well, that's funny. So this is one of my first idea books. So when I was in school, I went to school. The campus was kind of spread out, but it was mainly on 23rd Street in New York. And so there's a wonderful bookstore off of Union Square called the Strand Bookstore. And when I lived there, it was still a little bit rough and ready. And what I mean by that, it was like really old wooden bookshelves that threatened to fall down, and things were just stacked to the ceiling. And it was a little bit scary. And I used to joke around that they would find me in the basement, crushed under lots of books, because like you would go down there and you'd hear the creaking of the bookshelves. There were so many books piled on them. But they also, outside along the sidewalk, they used to have these dollar books, and part of our assignment was to find a book, any book, and then use the book boards, which are these, to create our books. All right. Somebody says, looks the same. No, well, I will say that in the Strand now, I can't remember when they did it, but they got a huge amount of money and they fixed it up. So they put safe stairs, and they started doing this thing where there were like these little tables that they would put out, and they would put the books on the tables, and like kind of curate things. And so it's a lot different than it used to be. It's a lot like fancier now, I guess, which is nice because then you don't have to worry about things collapsing on you. But yeah, Susan says the Strand is fabulous, one of the most iconic bookstores on the planet. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I miss going there. I found lots of things. So this is so I gutted out this book and I put my own paper. And I'm hoping that there's nothing inappropriate from the use time in these pages. We'll just hope. So I found this postcard of Marilyn Monroe, and I really enjoyed this postcard, and actually spawned a lot of work. So, believe it or not, I did a whole series on Marilyn Monroe, and I'll show you some of the things that how that happened. So I would do drawings and would stick them in there. There's mark making that I did, and let me peek. And then so I would just do doodles and write in these. And then so I started doing a series of collages based off of like Marilyn Monroe. So if you can see it, you can kind of see the profile and the lips and the eyes. And I did watercolors off of that I then collaged together and then use those in I took color copies of those watercolors and put those in there. And so one of the things about an idea book is so like I'm super fascinated about the idea of how to harness your creativity. As a creative professional, I kind of feel like it's like anything. You have to figure out how to best optimize your experience. Sometimes, if you wait for creativity to strike and you just like you wait for that kind of light bulb moment, um, I feel as though those come few and far between unless you create those optimal conditions for those light bulbs to go off. So it's kind of like, it's like hoping for inspiration as opposed to kind of getting the ground ready and setting yourself up for success. So one of the things about this is I would take different words like human law um, and unknowable whole and things like that. And then I would use that to create prompts for myself. So whenever I had time, I could invest in that and kind of create collages. And since I'm making my own, I put my own paper in here. I could do that. And this is from a class that I took with Trudy Kawami, and I was really interested, or Dr. Trudy Kawami, I should say, in ancient Near Eastern art. But the cool thing about being able to put your own paper in is that you can put things like sandpaper if you want. And you don't have to rely on the paper that's already in the sketchbooks. And this is interesting. So whenever I kind of take notes, I wrote about like Joseph Cornell and his boxes and his art. And I put down a note about Talus, which is a bookbinding store, which you can get lots of cool supplies there. But so I would do different textures and patterns and colors. And this is just a really quick one. And so, like I would do in anatomical drawings, that would fold out and talk about shows that I had to go to, take notes. Cynthia says, who has the time to wait for inspiration to arrive? Most working artists just have to make work and hope for the best. Your inspiration books are really cool. I just have cigar boxes and things. I just have cigar boxes of things to look at. Cynthia keeps a really cool sketchbook, and hers are works of art. Mine are a little bit rough and ready. They're very utilitarian for my purposes. But so yeah, so these ones, my idea books, I used to put more time into um doing things like that. But also, like, I used to keep schedules of different shows and when to see them, and would keep track of them and how I could go and see them. And I was really lucky. This is not how you spell that artist's name, by the way, Lee Bonteque. But I was really lucky to live in New York at a time where were some amazing shows. So the Kiki Smith show was up at MoMA, and there was an exhibit by an artist who's from San Francisco, who's a collage artist named Jess. Um, and then there was also Lee Bonteque up. So that was a really good time to, you know, see shows. Um, but so then I would sometimes plan out some of my different collages and ideas. So if I was talking about ideas about contrast, I would do like soft, fluid, non-harsh, non-abrasive, jagged, threatening, violent. And so sometimes if I'm stuck for an idea, what I'll do is I'll start with one word and then branch out into other words. And I derive a lot of inspiration from words because I think that they kind of encapsulate and symbolize so much. And there's a lot of emotional resonance with different ideas and books that are so individual and unique to each person. So I find a lot of inspiration there. So a lot of things would start out kind of like that. And um, so I would make my this is an early idea book. So some of the drawing is not the best. And this was a contour drawing where you just draw without looking. And I can remember this evening very well. Um, and maybe because my friend had really distinctive eyebrows, and that's how I remember this. But so that's one thing you can do if you want to, as a kind of a warm up exercise, is to not look while you're drawing. And then you kind of create these loose, sketchy, kind of random amorphous shapes, and you can build things through that. Oh, and this was from Shakespeare and Company. I don't know why I have that covered up, but I'm going to keep that covered up in case it's not appropriate. Um, and so, yeah, I had different things. I'm getting nervous because some of the stuff is a little bit personal, but kind of different things about light and shadow and creating texture. And let me see about this. It's getting a little bit, I feel as though we may be going into dangerous territory. Um, let's see. And by dangerous territory, I mean just stuff that's a little bit too personal to maybe share with the internet. Which is fine. And this is another kind of continuous line drawing on top of a silhouette. So I think that they're, a lot of the things that I kind of dealt with at that time were kind of figuring out myself and trying to understand who I was as a person and as a young person. So a lot of this is very kind of, I don't know, looking for answers. And so, yeah. Anyway, so there you have it. There's my first idea book, or one of the first ones. Um, Here's some cool pages where I just took photocopies and put them in. And I don't know what that's about. I didn't even remember a lot of this, which is interesting. I guess I do remember some of this, but the nice thing about this is that you can do different references. And the art that I was studying at the time is a little bit different than the work that I do now. But yeah, so, and that's okay, you know. I don't know what this is about. Oh, there's rubber bands. So I put all these different rubber bands, which looks gross now, but um, I studied a lot of more conceptual work. So there's that as well. So I used to do a lot of like big, large scale collages that were like this, where I wove paper together and would do drawings and yeah. So then I would take and scale them down and then do things with them. And then, so these were just all little quick things. And if I liked the texture of a fabric, I could photocopy the fabric texture and put that in there. What is this? Looks like an opening or announcement for a show. So I'd put things like that. So this was a good one. This was one of my professors, Stephen Westfall. And this was Marilyn Monroe's show. And yeah, so it's interesting for me even to look back. So here's a saying for Thursday, October 16th, 2003. Art belongs to the emotions, not to the intellect. In words of Schopenhauer, all art aspires to the condition of music. In fact, apart from music, painting is the only pure art because meaning, in the ordinary sense of the word, is essential to it. A special emotion is involved, which is supersensual. To appreciate a work of art, we may bring with us nothing from life, with the exception, Clive Bell adds, of the three-dimensional space. Each art has its own emotion proper to it, but in each case, the emotion is aroused by significant form. Bell does not make clear what he means by this phrase. His follower, Roger Fry, assures us that it signifies more than just a harmonious pattern. It is the outcome of an endeavor to express an idea rather than create a pleasing object. So I used to think a lot about artwork. This is another thing of Stephen Westfall's. And I don't know. I think I'm a little bit different now in the sense that, oh, this is a good one. This is Lee Krasner. So if you don't know who Lee Krasner is, Lee Krasner was married to Jackson Pollock and kind of, I don't know. I like her work better than Jackson Pollock's, and then also a lot of the things that he was kind of famous for, she was doing in her work before she had met him. But because of the time period, she didn't have like the same kind of recognition that he did. And if you go out to the Hamptons and you visit the graveyard, which is kind of like the who's who of American art of that time period, like Jackson Pollock has this huge boulder as his grave marker, and then hers is like such a small, tiny thing next to it. But anyways, so lots of things. Anyways, so these are more recent, and these are kind of like my travel to go idea books, and I keep these. I keep copies of my tax IDs in here, but I plan things out and I take notes about like different jewelry designs I'm going to do. And sometimes I just sketch things loosely, and those things will manifest into other things. So, Yeah, like there's different things that I kind of, whenever the idea strikes, I'll keep track of them. And then I like to make lists. So I make lots and lots of lists and then I plan out projects. So I think that's important for me to keep kind of my brain organized. Now, I do have, this is a smaller, more portable, and like all of these designs I ended up taking and working on them and making them more finished designs. So, like, even though this starts off as a super rough sketch, I then went and refined that drawing and then carved that drawing and turned this into a piece. The same with this piece and this piece. I ended up making a whole little series of those. So, that is the portable one. And I also keep um, a more written one. And then if I'm going to a show, I also put my receipts in there or business cards so that I can keep track of those. But this is my bigger one, which is not as convenient to take around. It's a little bit more cumbersome, but I can also plan things out. And my idea book is very kind of rough and ready. And so like I just kind of put those things down as they come to me. And I don't spend a ton of time um, making them super perfect. Um, so yeah. And sometimes things are kind of a little bit looser in here, and then I can kind of refine them, go in and refine them. And then when we got the laser, oh, and then here, and keep Azalea and Max. But when we got the laser, I would take drawings and then turn those drawings and put them into Photoshop and then clean them up in Photoshop and then turn them into vectors and then we would engrave them. So you might recognize some of these designs as ones that we have in our laser etched pendants. Um, like And sometimes I won't take the whole drawing. I'll just take a little portion of it and use just a portion of it. So, like this one, I would draw up this circle. And then also, one of the things about this, when you're doing that, sometimes it helps to draw things really big and then shrink them down. So, I would do this really big and then shrink it down, and it would look super detailed. However, sometimes when you're cutting with a laser, it can kind of get kind of muddy because the lines are so fine that and if there's like a crosshatch, sometimes it can just pull up a whole section. So, yeah. So these are mostly drawings that I did for the laser. And I would sketch them out with pencil and then go back over them with a Sharpie or marker and work on them in that way. And like the original pendant that I have with this mermaid, I took this mermaid and shrunk her down and superimposed her on top of this and then had that cut. But those are one of those kinds of designs that never I don't know, that never kind of took off. Um, so sometimes I make them really big. And let me see. I'm trying to see. Oh, like this is a good example of a design. So I started off with this and I didn't like the way that turned out. So I took a photocopy of this and then changed it. I whited out the bottom and put a piece of paper over that part and redrew the bottom part. And then so when we did cut it out and shrunk it down, it was a lot more effective. Like little veiny vine thing kind of looked weird when it was printed. So, yeah. And also, like this, I did not love this face, especially when it was printed. So what I did is I like the wings, and I like this part. So when I photocopied this, I blocked out this part and redrew the face, and then this turned out to be the Fly Bravely. And sometimes you have to go back and forth to get it where it is. Um, So yeah. So the idea books are good as a place, as a repository for different ideas and sketches, but also I make lots of lists. So for the bigger books, they're good because if I have to draw something bigger, I can do that. And I can use those bigger sheets to like do things. Let me show you a piece. Like, so this is a mixtape, and we used to have a book club where we would read a book and be inspired by the book and create something that was inspired by the book. So we read a book called Eleanor and Park, which is by Rainbow Rowell, and they used to make each other mixtapes. And so I made this mixtape drawing, and then we cut it out in acrylic, and this is what it looks like. So I think it's pretty festive how you can do that. And then like there's a drawing for a bird. And sometimes I plan out different pendants and designs this way. And the cool thing is sometimes you can play around with things with like Photoshop. So if you go to my Instagram, you can kind of see this, but in kind of a Photoshopped way. And yeah, so where is it? It should be coming up soon. But yeah, so I kind of use this. I also I used to do designs for books and magazines, and so when I was making things, I would have to plan them out. So as I was making them, I would take notes and put down what the components were, and then be able to plan that out that way. Um, But so a lot of these silhouette designs that I do for my cutout pendants start off in my idea book. And so you might recognize some of them. But also, I want to say that they don't always end up the way you think they will. So when I did this, I thought this was like super great and was fine the way it was. But then when I did the cutout, some of these things were super fragile. So I ended up having to redo the design because the pieces were just too fragile and they would break off if you basically looked at them. Um, but also, like you can see this looks terrible. And I was trying to do a stylized version. This looks terrible. This looks terrible. And then finally, I kind of got it to where I was happy with it. So it's one of those things where there's like a progression. It's not necessarily one and done, so to speak. But like that, um, or maybe that's not the one, but it ended up being this. I ended up turning these drawings into these kind of shapes, and then I could layer the different drawings. So, anyways, These are just where I kind of do my ideas and plot out my project. Oh, this one. So it started off where I did this drawing, and then I ended up superimposing this bead that I had done earlier on top, and then kind of creating that shape and to make a kind of asymmetrical focal point. So, anyways, I think it's fun to have these because when you are kind of stuck and looking for ideas, then you just have them. You know, when you're kind of busy and you don't know what to do, you can go back and look at your idea book, and then you're like, oh, then I can do something. So yeah, hopefully you all enjoyed that. I'm gonna flip this around. Hey everyone. So hopefully you enjoyed kind of talking about the idea books, and it inspired you, if you don't have one already, to start one. I think they're super useful. I think they are a great way of keeping ideas in a play in like one place. I know for a lot of people, they're starting to migrate over to digital things, and if that's useful to you, then definitely do that. But for me, I like to have kind of an analog way of doing it, and I can remember things better if I write them down. So there is something to be said about that kind of physical hand memory kind of connection. So that's one of the benefits of having your own idea book. So yeah. All right. So I see a couple folks have tuned in or have commented, mostly about the bookstore. Marianne says very inspirational. Thank you. Yeah, I enjoy having these. I think that anything you can do to kind of ramp up your creativity, all the better. There's a wonderful book called Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, and she kind of writes about creativity for creative people and how to harness that. Um, and one of the things that really kind of shook me is wrote this line that said, "Done is better than perfect." And one of the things that I sometimes do is I will sometimes agonize over things, and will not put them out into the world until they're perfect. However, the problem with that is I realize that that's a kind of coping mechanism for dealing with trauma, and being a perfectionist is a trauma response, and it protects you from being criticized or whatever, which is not necessarily great. So, done is better than perfect was a very kind of revolutionary thing in my mind, because it just forced me to like just go on and do things and post about stuff and not get worked up about if things were perfect or not. So, yeah. June says, thanks for sharing. It's my pleasure. Diane says, I need to make a jewelry one, so I remember what I wanted to do with the beads that I buy. By the time I get them, or the beads that I buy, by the time I get time to make stuff with them. Yeah, I think it's a great way to plan out your designs. And then I know that like for Azalea, when she was doing her kit, she planned out her a design first before she even picked her components, and that helped her kind of zero in on what she wanted to include in her kit. So I think it's important to have these. I know that some people, they're like, oh, I'm just creative all the time, and I think that's awesome if you're like that. For me, um, I'm not like that. I have to work at it. I've never been one of those people who's naturally talented. Um, and that may come as a shock to some of you. It's not a shock to me, but I really had to work on it. And so for me, I'm very interested in how I can kind of capture the lightning, and bottle that lightning and make it last. So what I do is I keep my idea books. I have a lot of different stations set up so that I can work on different things and I don't get kind of caught up. And I've developed different systems for myself so that when I do hit a slump, then I can go in and work on those things to kind of get things going again. Um, Lorraine says, I have to work on it too. I think it's one of those things like people, they're like, oh, you can draw so well. But as you can see from these drawings, they're not amazing. They're not like great drawings. Um, but it takes practice. And I think there's something to be said about spending time training yourself and training your eye and your hand, and building up that coordination. And sometimes when people phrase it like that, where it sounds like a lot of work and like not fun, then people get turned off by it. But I think there is something nice about understanding that if you put the time in and you put the energy in, you will get better. And it may be terrible, subjective, at first, but the more you work on something, the better you get. It's just a simple kind of concept. So don't give up if you feel frustrated. If you don't feel creative, you can always start a new one. There's lots of different techniques to get over the fear of the blank page. If something's blank, then make it not blank. So get uh, a tea bag and smear it on the page, and let that tea stain make it not blank anymore, or make a mark, erase the mark, take an image, photocopy the image, trace an image, then work off the image. There's so many different ways that you can kind of break out a creative rut and get things going. For jewelry design, some people are like, well, how do you translate um, this to that? So, how do you translate fine art to jewelry making? Well, it's the same thing. The principles of design don't really change. You just have to factor in the body as kind of your canvas. So, how do you want to present the body? Do you want the piece to show? Do you want the body to show? You come up with a list of questions and then you try to solve those questions with your design solutions. So I think it's pretty simple. And I probably shouldn't say it's simple. I think it can be simple the more you work on it. And also, then other things come into play, like your color aesthetics and what makes you you and what makes you unique, and how do you put things together creatively is so different than what other people do. So I feel like, if you are struggling with finding the right beads or finding the right thing, it's one of those things where you can dig deeper and kind of create those solutions for yourself. Anyways, I've talked for an hour about idea books and creativity, and hopefully that has inspired you and will encourage you to get out there and get an idea book if you don't have one already. And if you do, then I hope you continue to work in your idea book, and it will provide many, many, many hours of happy enjoyment and will help you get out of a creative rut if you get into one. All right. Have a great evening, rest of your evening. I'll see you later. Bye bye.